Jaewon bought me from my father like I was livestock, and on our wedding night he told me I was nobody, just payment for a debt he'll never forgive. I told him to go to hell and slammed my bedroom door in his face, but it's 2 a.m. now, and he just walked in smelling like whiskey, saying he can't stop thinking about our kiss at the altar. I should push him away, but before I can decide, his mouth is on mine and he's kissing me like I'm the air he needs to survive. And when I kiss him back just as fiercely, I realize this is not the kiss of a man who feels nothing. The wedding dress felt like a prison. Betty stood at the altar, her dark skin glowing against the white silk that cost more than her family's house. She didn't choose this dress. She didn't choose any of this. Her hands trembled as she clutched a bouquet of white roses, their thorns pricking her fingers through the thin fabric of her gloves. Across from her stood Jaewon. He was the most beautiful man she had ever seen and the most terrifying. His black suit fit perfectly on his tall frame. His dark eyes were cold as winter ice, staring at her like she was something dirty on his expensive shoes. His jaw was tight, his full lips pressed into a hard line. Even now, at his own wedding, he looked ready to kill someone. Maybe he would kill her. "Do you take this woman to be your wife?" the officiant asked in Korean. A translator whispered the words in English for Betty. Jaewon's silence stretched so long that people in the crowd began to whisper. His men, dangerous-looking guys in black suits, shifted uncomfortably. Finally, he spoke one word. Yes. It sounded like a curse. The officiant turned to Betty. "Do you take this man to be your husband?" Her father's face flashed in her mind, broken, bleeding, begging these men for more time to pay his gambling debts. They had given him a choice, his life or his daughter. Some choice. "Yes," she whispered. "You may kiss the bride." Jaewon stepped closer. Betty's breath caught. He smelled like expensive cologne and danger. His hand gripped her waist, fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. Without warning, he pulled her against his solid chest and kissed her. It wasn't gentle. His lips crushed hers with barely controlled anger. The kiss was meant to punish, to show her exactly how much he hated this. But something electric shot through Betty's body anyway, making her gasp against his mouth. She felt his muscles tense, felt something shift in the way he held her for just a second. Then he pulled away like she had burned him. The crowd clapped. Betty touched her swollen lips, her heart racing. Jaewon didn't look at her again. He turned and walked down the aisle, leaving her to follow like a dog on a leash. The reception was torture. Betty sat beside Jaewon at a long table while people congratulated them. He didn't speak to her, didn't touch her. He drank whiskey and conducted business with his men as if she didn't exist. When someone asked about his beautiful bride, he said, "She's nobody." Each word was a knife. By the time they arrived at his mansion, Betty's face hurt from fake smiling. The house was massive, all white marble and gold fixtures. It looked like a palace, a very cold, empty palace. "Your room is upstairs, third door on the left," Jaewon said, his back to her as he poured another drink. "Stay there." "My room?" Betty asked. "We're married. Don't we share a room?" He spun around so fast, she stepped back. His eyes blazed with something dark and dangerous. In 3 long strides, he was in front of her, towering over her smaller frame. "Let me make something very clear," he said softly, his voice like silk over steel. "This marriage is a business transaction, nothing more. You are here because your worthless father owed me money he couldn't pay. Your payment. You mean nothing to me." Betty lifted her chin, refusing to cower even though her knees shook. "Then why kiss me like that at the altar?" Something flickered in his eyes. That was for show. It didn't feel like it was for show. His hand shot out and grabbed her chin, tilting her face up to meet his burning gaze. Don't flatter yourself. You think because you're pretty, I'm supposed to want you. I don't want a wife. I especially don't want you. His thumb brushed across her bottom lip as he spoke, betraying his words. Betty's breath hitched. The air between them crackled with something neither could name. Let me go, she said quietly, gladly. But he didn't move for several long seconds. His eyes dropped to her mouth, then lower, trailing down her neck to where her pulse hammered visibly. His jaw clenched. Go to your room before I do something we'll both regret. Betty pulled away from his grip and grabbed her dress, hiking it up to climb the grand staircase. She felt his eyes on her the whole way up, burning into her back. At the top, she turned. He was still watching, his hand gripping his glass so hard she thought it might shatter. Their eyes locked. Then he turned away and disappeared into his study, slamming the door. The bedroom was beautiful and lifeless. Betty sat on the edge of the enormous bed and finally let herself cry. She had lost everything, her freedom, her future. Her father had sold her to a monster, and now she was trapped. She changed out of the wedding dress and into a silk nightgown that had been left for her. The fabric was thin, sliding against her skin like water. She climbed into bed and stared at the ceiling. Around midnight, she heard footsteps outside her door. They stopped right there, waiting. Her heart pounded. Was he going to come in? The doorknob turned slowly. Betty sat up, clutching the sheets to her chest. The door opened and Jaewon stood there, still in his dress shirt, but with the top buttons undone. His hair was messy, like he'd been running his hands through it. His eyes were slightly unfocused from the alcohol. "What are you doing here?" she asked. He leaned against the doorframe, studying her. "This is my house. I go where I want." "You said to stay in my room." "I did." He pushed off the frame and walked toward her slowly, like a predator approaching prey. "But I can't stop thinking about something." "What?" Her voice came out breathier than she intended. He reached the bed and braced his hands on either side of her, leaning down until their faces were inches apart. "I need to know if that kiss was a fluke." Before she could respond, his mouth was on hers again. This kiss was different, slower, deeper. His lips moved against hers with skill that made her head spin. Without thinking, her hands came up to grip his shirt, pulling him closer instead of pushing away. He made a low sound in his throat and deepened the kiss further, his tongue sliding against hers in a way that made heat pool low in her belly. One of his hands moved to her neck, tilting her head to give him better access. His thumb stroked the sensitive skin there as he kissed her like he was trying to devour her. Betty had never been kissed like this, never felt this kind of fire in her veins. Then suddenly, Jaewon jerked back like he'd been shocked. His eyes were wild, his breathing heavy. He stared at her swollen lips, her flushed face, her hand still gripping his shirt. "This was a mistake," he said roughly. He turned and walked out, closing the door firmly behind him. Betty collapsed back on the bed, her whole body trembling. She touched her lips where his had been moments ago. That wasn't the kiss of a man who felt nothing. That was the kiss of a man barely holding himself back. What had she just gotten herself into? In the hallway, Jaewon pressed his forehead against the wall, trying to calm his racing heart. His body still burned with need for her. This was bad, very bad. He didn't do attachments. He didn't do feelings. And he especially didn't fall for the women forced into his life. But something about Betty's fearless eyes and soft lips was already getting under his skin. He pushed off the wall and headed to his own room, knowing sleep wouldn't come easy tonight. This arrangement was supposed to be simple. She stays. He ignores her. Debt paid. So why did he already want to go back into that room and finish what he started? 3 weeks of living like ghosts in the same house was driving Jaewon insane. He saw Betty everywhere. In the morning when she ate breakfast in the sunlit kitchen, her dark skin glowing golden in the light. In the afternoon when she read books in the library, curled up in his favourite chair. In the evening when she walked through the garden, her hair loose and wild around her shoulders, and every single time his body reacted in ways he hated. He tried to ignore her, tried to pretend she didn't exist, but it was impossible when she looked like that, moved like that, existed like that in his space. The worst part, she wasn't afraid of him anymore. Everyone feared Jaewon, his enemies, his men, even his own family before they died. Fear was how he controlled his world, but Betty would look him straight in the eye during their rare encounters, her chin lifted in defiance, and he felt something dangerous stir in his chest. Tonight, he came home late from a business meeting that had gone badly. 2 of his shipments had been intercepted. Someone was betraying him, and he would find out who. His mood was black as he entered the house, ready to pour a drink and brood in his study. Instead, he found Betty in the living room, wearing a red dress that hugged every curve of her body. She was dancing, music played from her phone, something with drums and rhythm that made her hips sway in ways that should be illegal. Her eyes were closed, her arms raised above her head as she moved. She looked free, beautiful, untouchable. Jaewon's hands clenched into fists. "What are you doing?" His voice cut through the music like a blade. Betty's eyes snapped open. She didn't look embarrassed or scared. She looked annoyed. "I'm dancing. Is that forbidden too? You're disturbing my peace." "Your peace?" She laughed, actually laughed at him. "You're never here. This whole house is like a tomb. I'm just trying to feel alive for 5 minutes." Something hot flared in his chest. "If you're so miserable, there's the door." "Oh, I would love to leave," Betty said, turning off the music and walking toward him. Each step was deliberate, her hips swaying even without the music. "But we both know your men would drag me back before I reach the gate. I'm a prisoner here, not a guest. You're my wife. I'm your slave." She stopped right in front of him, close enough that he could smell her perfume. Something floral and sweet that made his head spin. "You wanted me to be invisible, to hide in my room and not exist. But I exist, Jaewon, and I'm tired of pretending I don't." The way she said his name with that slight accent did things to him. "Watch your tone," he said quietly, dangerously. Or what? She tilted her head, her dark eyes challenging him. "You'll ignore me even more? Lock me in my room? At least then I'd know you acknowledge I'm alive." His control snapped. Jaewon grabbed her wrist and pulled her flush against him. "You want me to acknowledge you? Fine. I acknowledge that you're a distraction I don't need. I acknowledge that you walk around my house in dresses like this, driving me crazy. I acknowledge that I can't stop thinking about you no matter how hard I try." Betty's breath caught. Her free hand came up to press against his chest, but she didn't push him away. "Then, why do you keep trying?" "Because wanting you is weakness. Maybe," she whispered, her eyes dropping to his lips. "Or maybe fighting it is what makes you weak." The air between them crackled with electricity. Jaewon's hand tightened on her wrist as his other hand came up to cup her face. His thumb traced her bottom lip, and she trembled against him. "You don't know what you're asking for," he said roughly. "Then show me." He almost kissed her. His head lowered, their lips inches apart, both of them breathing hard. He could feel the rapid beat of her heart against his chest, could see the desire darkening her eyes. At the last second, he released her and stepped back. "Go to your room, Betty." The hurt that flashed across her face made something twist in his gut. But she recovered quickly, her expression going cold. "One day," she said softly, "you're going to regret pushing me away." She walked past him, her shoulder brushing his. The brief contact felt like fire. Jaewon stood frozen, listening to her footsteps climb the stairs. A door closed upstairs, and only then did he release the breath he'd been holding. He poured himself 3 fingers of whiskey and downed it in one swallow. This couldn't continue. He was losing control, and in his world, loss of control meant death. The next morning, Jaewon decided the solution was simple. Avoid her completely. He left before dawn and didn't return until after midnight. He threw himself into work, hunting down the traitor in his organization with singular focus. But even while torturing information out of his enemies, his mind wandered to Betty. Was she eating enough? Was she safe? Was she thinking about him the way he couldn't stop thinking about her? He hated it. By the 4th day of his avoidance strategy, Jaewon returned home at 2 a.m. to find Betty in the kitchen. She wore a tank top and shorts that showed off her long legs. Her hair was wrapped in a colourful scarf. She was making tea, moving around his kitchen like she owned it. "Can't sleep?" he asked from the doorway. She didn't startle. "I could ask you the same thing. I've been working. You've been hiding." She poured hot water over her tea bag, the steam rising between them. "I scare you." "Nothing scares me." She turned to face him, leaning back against the counter. "I do, because you want me, and you hate that you want me." Jaewon walked into the kitchen slowly. "You think very highly of yourself." "I think clearly." She took a sip of her tea, watching him over the rim. "You avoid me during the day, but I hear you walk past my room at night. Sometimes you stop outside my door for minutes. What are you doing, Jaewon? Working up the courage to come in?" His jaw clenched. "I'm making sure you're safe." "Liar!" He moved fast, closing the distance between them in 2 strides. He braced his hands on the counter on either side of her, trapping her. "You want to know what I'm doing outside your door? I'm fighting the urge to break it down. I'm reminding myself why I can't have you. I'm trying to remember that you're here because of a debt, not because you chose me." Betty set down her tea with shaking hands. "And if I choose you now?" "You don't know what you're saying." "I know exactly what I'm saying." Her hands came up to rest on his chest. She could feel his heart racing under her palms. "I'm saying that I hate you for bringing me here. I hate you for treating me like I'm nothing, but I can't stop wanting you to touch me, to look at me the way you're looking at me right now." Jaewon's control was hanging by a thread. "Betty, kiss me," she whispered, "or let me go, but stop torturing us both." His hand came up to wrap around her throat gently, tilting her head back. "If I kiss you again, I won't stop there." "Good." He crushed his mouth to hers with a groan. This kiss was explosive, all the weeks of tension burning between them. His tongue swept into her mouth, claiming her, tasting her. She kissed him back just as fiercely, her hands fisting in his shirt. Jaewon lifted her onto the counter, stepping between her legs. His hands roamed her body, sliding under her tank top to feel her smooth skin. She gasped against his mouth, arching into his touch. "You're so soft," he murmured against her lips. "So perfect." His mouth moved to her neck, kissing and biting the sensitive skin there. Betty's head fell back, her hands threading through his hair. Every nerve in her body was on fire. "Jaewon," she breathed. The sound of his name on her lips like that nearly broke him. His hand slid up her thigh and she trembled. He could feel her pulse racing under his lips as he kissed her neck. Then his phone rang. The shrill sound cut through the haze of desire. Jaewon froze. his breathing ragged. Reality came crashing back. He pulled away from her, his eyes wild. Betty sat on the counter, her lips swollen, her chest heaving, looking at him with confused desire. "I can't," he said roughly, even though his body screamed otherwise. "Why not?" "Because once I have you, I won't let you go. And you deserve better than a man like me." He turned and walked away, leaving her alone in the kitchen. But this time, something had changed. As Jaewon lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, he knew the truth. He was already possessive of her, already obsessed, already falling. And that terrified him more than any enemy ever could. The gunshots started at midnight. Betty woke to the sound of breaking glass and shouting in Korean. Her heart jumped into her throat as more shots echoed through the house. She rolled out of bed, her mind racing. Someone was attacking. Her door burst open and Jaewon stood there, gun in hand, his eyes wild. "Get down, now." Before she could move, he crossed the room and pushed her to the floor, covering her body with his. More gunshots rang out downstairs. She could hear men yelling, fighting, the sounds of violence getting closer. "Stay here," Jaewon commanded. "Don't move until I come back." "Where are you going?" "To kill whoever dared attack my home." His eyes met hers, and for a moment she saw real fear there. Fear for her. "If anyone besides me comes through that door, hide in the closet. There's a gun in the top drawer." Then he was gone, moving like a shadow into the hallway. Betty huddled on the floor, her whole body shaking. The sounds of fighting seemed to last forever. More gunshots, shouting, something heavy, crashing. Then, slowly, silence. She held her breath, listening. Footsteps approached her room, heavy, deliberate. She scrambled toward the dresser, reaching for the top drawer where Jaewon said there was a gun. The door opened. "It's me!" Jaewon's voice cut through her panic. She spun around and saw him standing there, alive but covered in blood. Some of it was his. A cut above his eyebrow dripped red down his face. His shirt was torn, showing a gash on his shoulder. Without thinking, Betty ran to him. "You're hurt." "It's nothing." But he swayed slightly. She grabbed his arm, steadying him. "Sit down before you fall down." For once, he didn't argue. He let her guide him to sit on the edge of her bed. His hands were still shaking, and she realized it wasn't from pain. It was from fear that hadn't left him yet. "Are they all dead?" she asked quietly, grabbing tissues to press against his bleeding eyebrow. "Yes." His hand suddenly grabbed her wrist, stopping her movements. His eyes locked onto hers with an intensity that stole her breath. "When I heard them coming up the stairs toward your room, I thought I would lose you. I thought I'd be too late. But you weren't. I could have been." His other hand came up to cup her face. "You could have died tonight because of me, because of who I am and what I do. But I didn't." His thumb stroked her cheek. "I can't lose you, Betty. I know I have no right to feel this way. I know I've treated you terribly. But the thought of you being hurt made me realize something." "What?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "That I'm done fighting this. Done pretending I don't want you every second of every day." Before she could respond, he pulled her down onto his lap and kissed her with desperate hunger. This kiss was different from all the others. It was claiming, possessive, raw with emotion he'd been holding back for weeks. Betty kissed him back just as fiercely, her hands tangling in his hair. She didn't care that he was bloody, didn't care that he was dangerous. She just needed to feel him alive and real beneath her hands. "Tell me to stop," he murmured against her lips. "Tell me to leave right now, or I won't be able to. Don't stop." She pulled back to look into his eyes. "Don't leave. I want this. I want you." Something fierce and possessive flashed in his eyes. "You're mine then. Say it. I'm yours." He groaned and stood, lifting her with him. He laid her gently on the bed, following her down. His body covered hers, his weight pressing her into the mattress in a way that made her feel safe despite everything. "I need to know you're okay," he said roughly, his hands running over her arms, her sides, checking for injuries. "Did they hurt you?" "No. You protected me." His forehead dropped to hers. "I'll always protect you. No one will ever touch you. You're mine to protect, mine to keep safe, mine." The possessiveness in his voice should have scared her. Instead, it made heat pool low in her belly. "Then claim me," she whispered. His control shattered. Jaewon's mouth found hers again as his hands explored her body with a hunger that had been building for weeks. He touched her like he was memorizing every curve, every soft place. When his lips moved to her neck, she arched beneath him, gasping. "So responsive," he murmured against her skin. "So perfect. Do you know how long I've wanted this? Wanted you? Show me." She breathed. He did. His hands were everywhere, learning what made her gasp, what made her moan his name. He was surprisingly gentle, despite his rough words, treating her like something precious, even as he claimed her completely. "Look at me," he commanded softly, when her eyes fluttered closed. "I want to see your face, want to watch you come undone." Betty's eyes opened, locking with his. What she saw there took her breath away. Desire, yes. Possession, absolutely. But also something softer, something that looked almost like tenderness. "You're so beautiful like this," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Beautiful and mine." Their first time together was intense and overwhelming. Jaewon whispered things in Korean that she didn't understand, but felt in her soul. He told her in English that she belonged to him now, that he would never let her go, that she had ruined him for anyone else. When it was over, they lay tangled together, both breathing hard. Jaewon pulled her against his chest, his arms wrapped tightly around her like he was afraid she might disappear. "That was," Betty started, but couldn't find words. "Everything," he finished quietly. His fingers traced lazy patterns on her back. "You're everything, Betty. I fought it because I knew once I had you, I'd never recover." She looked up at him, surprised by the vulnerability in his voice. This was not the cold man who had married her. This was someone real, someone who felt deeply and was scared by those feelings. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now you sleep. I'll stay here and keep you safe." He pressed a kiss to her forehead, surprisingly gentle. "Rest, beautiful. I've got you." She fell asleep in his arms, feeling safer than she had in months. When Betty woke, morning light streamed through the windows. She reached across the bed, expecting to find Jaewon beside her. He was gone. She sat up, clutching the sheets to her chest. Maybe he had just gone to shower or get coffee. She got dressed and went downstairs, her body still humming from the night before. She found him in his study, on the phone, looking every bit the cold Mafia boss. When he saw her in the doorway, something flickered in his eyes before his expression went blank. "I have to go," he said into the phone and hung up. "Good morning," Betty said softly, walking toward him with a smile. "It's afternoon, actually." His voice was clipped, professional. "I have meetings all day. Don't wait up." She stopped, confused. "Jaewon, about last night." Last night was a mistake born from adrenaline and fear. "It won't happen again." The words hit her like a slap. "A mistake?" "We both got caught up in the moment after the attack. It meant nothing." "Nothing?" Her voice rose. "You said I was yours. You said I was everything." His jaw clenched. "I say a lot of things in the heat of the moment. Don't read into it." Betty felt tears burn her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "You're a coward." "Excuse me?" "You heard me. You're terrified of what you feel, so you're pushing me away. Again." She walked up to his desk, leaning forward. "But I felt you last night, Jaewon. I saw you, the real you, and you can't take that back no matter how cold you act now. Get out of my study!" "Gladly." She turned and walked away with her head high, even though her heart was breaking. Behind her, she heard something crash, glass shattering, Jaewon's frustration finally boiling over, but he didn't come after her. Betty went to her room and finally let the tears fall. She had given herself to him completely, and he had thrown it back in her face like it was nothing. In his study, Jaewon stood among the broken glass of the whiskey tumbler he'd thrown at the wall. His hands shook, his chest felt tight. He had just had the most incredible night of his life, holding the woman who somehow made him feel human again. And then dawn had come with the reality that loving her put her in danger. The attack proved that. So he did what he always did. He pushed her away to protect her, even if it was destroying them both. The pattern started 3 days after their first night together. During the day, Jaewon was cold and distant, barking orders at her like she was one of his employees. He criticised everything from how she dressed to where she spent her time in the house. He picked fights over nothing, his eyes hard and his words sharp. But at night, everything changed. He would appear at her door after midnight, his control finally breaking. Sometimes he knocked, sometimes he just walked in like he owned her room, which technically he did, but she always let him stay. Their nights together were explosive, passionate, full of whispered confessions that disappeared with the sunrise. "This has to stop," Betty said on the 5th night, even as she pulled him down onto her bed. "I know," he agreed, his mouth already on her neck. "Tomorrow." But tomorrow never came. The pattern continued, driving them both slowly insane. 2 weeks into this torture, Betty finally confronted him during dinner. She had started eating in the dining room instead of hiding in her room, refusing to be invisible anymore. "Why do you hate me during the day?" she asked, setting down her fork. Jaewon looked up from his plate, his expression unreadable. "I don't hate you." "Then what do you call the way you treat me? You act like I'm dirt on your shoes, but then at night, you touch me like I'm precious. Which is the real you, Jaewon?" He was quiet for a long moment. "Both. Neither. I don't know anymore." The honesty surprised her. She softened slightly. "Talk to me. Help me understand." "There's nothing to understand. This arrangement is complicated. Only because you make it complicated." She stood and walked around the table to where he sat. "What are you so afraid of?" His hand shot out and grabbed her wrist, pulling her down onto his lap. The sudden movement made her gasp. His eyes burned into hers, filled with conflict. "I'm afraid that if I let myself care about you in the daylight, I'll lose you," he said roughly. "Everyone I've ever cared about has been taken from me. My parents, my sister, everyone." Betty's heart cracked at the pain in his voice. "What happened to them?" "Killed. All of them. By rival families who wanted to hurt me." His grip on her wrist tightened, not painful, but desperate. "I was 18 when I watched my sister die. She was only 15. They killed her to send me a message." "Jaewon," she whispered, her hand coming up to cup his face. "I built walls after that. Became cold, ruthless, because caring makes you weak in my world. But then you came along with your fearless eyes and your fire, and you're breaking down everything I built to protect myself. Maybe those walls need to come down. If they come down and I lose you, it will destroy me." She leaned her forehead against his. "Then don't lose me. Keep me close. Stop pushing me away every morning like I'm a secret you're ashamed of. His arms wrapped around her waist, holding her tight. I'm not ashamed. I'm terrified. So am I, she admitted. But I'm tired of fighting this, fighting you, fighting us. He kissed her then, soft and slow, so different from their usual desperate passion. When he pulled back, something had shifted in his eyes. Come with me tomorrow, he said. I have business to handle. I want you there. Why? Because I'm tired of pretending you don't matter, and because keeping you close means I can protect you better. The next day, Betty found herself in Jaewon's car, heading to a meeting with his business partners. He had dressed her in an expensive black dress, draped diamonds around her neck, and told his men that she was not to be left alone for even a second. Stay next to me, he instructed as they entered the building. His hand rested possessively on her lower back. Don't speak unless spoken to. These men are dangerous. The meeting was conducted entirely in Korean, but Betty could feel the tension in the room. Jaewon sat at the head of the table like a king, his presence commanding respect and fear. She sat beside him, and every so often his hand would find hers under the table, squeezing gently. After the meeting, one of the older men approached them. He spoke in accented English. So this is the wife we've heard about? Beautiful. African, yes? Yes, Jaewon said coldly. And off-limits. The man laughed. Protective. That's dangerous in our line of work, my friend. I don't consider you a friend, Jaewon replied, his voice deadly quiet. And if you look at her like that again, I'll remove your eyes. The man's smile faded. He bowed slightly and walked away. In the car afterward, Betty looked at Jaewon. You didn't have to threaten him. Yes, I did. He was undressing you with his eyes. And that bothers you? He turned to face her, his eyes blazing. Everything about you bothers me. The way you look, the way you smell, the way every man in that room wanted you. You're mine, Betty. I don't share. Then stop treating me like a secret. I'm trying. He pulled her across the seat and into his lap, despite the driver being right there. Give me time to figure out how to do this without getting you killed. Over the following days, Jaewon started teaching Betty about his world. He showed her how to shoot a gun, how to spot danger, how to defend herself. He kept her by his side constantly, claiming it was for protection. But Betty knew better. He simply couldn't stand to be away from her. One night, lying tangled in her sheets after hours of passion, Jaewon traced patterns on her bare shoulder. Tell me about your family, he said quietly. Betty tensed. My father sold me to you. Not much else to tell. Before that, tell me who you were before this. She was quiet for a moment, then began to speak. She told him about growing up in a small house filled with love and laughter before her mother died, about her dreams of becoming a teacher, about how her father's gambling addiction destroyed everything. Jaewon listened, really listened, his fingers never stopping their gentle movement on her skin. You deserved better than this, he said when she finished. Better than me. Maybe I don't want better. Maybe I just want you. He pulled her on top of him, his hand spanning her waist. You're too good for me, but I'm too selfish to let you go. Then don't. Their relationship deepened with each passing day and night. Jaewon became addicted to her presence. He would find excuses to touch her, to be near her. His men noticed the change in him, how he smiled more when she was around, how his eyes followed her everywhere. But happiness in Jaewon's world never lasted long. 3 weeks after he had started keeping her close, they were leaving a restaurant when a black van screeched to a stop beside them. Men jumped out, grabbing Betty before Jaewon could react. No! Jaewon roared, pulling his gun, but one of the men held a knife to Betty's throat. "Drop the weapon or she dies!" Jaewon's hand shook. Something his men had never seen before. His eyes met Betty's terrified gaze. "It's okay," she said, trying to stay calm. "Let them take me." "No." His voice broke on the word. "I'll kill every single one of you." "Drop the gun or watch her bleed," the man repeated. Jaewon's security team had their weapons drawn, but there were too many civilians around. A wrong move, and innocent people would die. Betty saw the agony on Jaewon's face, the impossible choice. "I'll be okay," she told him. "Find me. I know you'll find me. Betty." His voice was raw with emotion, with fear, with love he'd never spoken aloud. The men dragged her into the van. The last thing she saw before the doors closed was Jaewon's devastated face, his gun finally lowering, his composure completely shattered. "Get every man we have," Jaewon said to his head of security, his voice deadly calm now, the calm before a storm. "Burn this city down if you have to, but find her. Find my wife." The word wife carried a weight it never had before. Not a transaction, not a prisoner. His wife, his woman, his everything. "We'll find her, boss," his man promised. "You have 3 hours before I start killing everyone connected to this." Jaewon's eyes had gone cold, but his hands still shook. "And tell everyone in the underworld that whoever took her just signed their own death warrant." As his men scrambled to follow orders, Jaewon stood on the empty street where Betty had been taken. For the first time since his sister's death, he felt genuine fear. He had been right to build walls, right to keep people at a distance, because now that those walls were down, now that he had let himself love her, losing her was going to destroy him. But he would get her back, even if he had to paint the streets red with blood, even if it cost him everything. She was his, and he protected what was his, no matter the cost. The warehouse was dark and smelled like rust and old blood. Betty sat tied to a chair, her wrists burning from the rough rope. Her lip was split from where one of the men had hit her. Her whole body ached, but she refused to cry, refused to give them the satisfaction. "He'll come for me," she said for the 100th time. The man in charge, a scarred Korean with dead eyes, laughed. "Of course he will. That's the point. Jaewon has been untouchable for years because he cares about nothing, but now he cares about you. That makes him weak. You don't know him. I know him better than you think. I worked for his father. I watched that boy build an empire on fear and blood. But love." He crouched in front of her, his smile cruel. "Love will be his destruction. And yours." Betty spit in his face. He hit her again, harder this time. Stars exploded in her vision. 3 days, he said, wiping his face. 3 days. He's been tearing the city apart looking for you, killing my men, burning my businesses, all for one woman. It's pathetic. But Betty smiled through the blood in her mouth. "He's coming, and when he gets here, you're all dead." Across the city, Jaewon stood in an abandoned building surrounded by bodies. His hands were covered in blood. His suit was ruined. He'd been awake for 72 hours straight, surviving on rage and desperation. "Talk," he said to the last man breathing, his gun pressed against the man's head. "Where is she?" "I don't know. I swear." Jaewon pulled the trigger without hesitation. The man's lies died with him. His phone rang, finally. "Tell me you found her." "East Docks, Warehouse 12, his head of security said. "We have eyes on the building, at least 15 men inside. I don't care if there's 100. I'm going in." "Boss, wait for backup." But Jaewon was already moving. He'd waited 3 days. 3 days of imagining Betty hurt, scared, calling for him. 3 days of realizing that his life meant nothing without her in it. 3 days of understanding that he loved her more than he feared losing her. He was done waiting. When Jaewon reached the warehouse, he didn't bother with strategy or stealth. He walked through the front door like an avenging angel, his guns blazing. Men fell before they could even raise their weapons. He moved through them like death itself, unstoppable. Nothing would keep him from her. Inside the main room, the scarred man held a knife to Betty's throat. One more step and she dies. Jaewon froze, his gun aimed at the man's head. His eyes found Betty's. She looked hurt, but alive, brave even with a blade against her skin. His heart, which had been frozen for days, finally started beating again. "Let her go," Jaewon said, his voice deadly calm. "Let her go, and I'll make your death quick. You're not in a position to negotiate. Neither are you." Jaewon smiled, cold and terrible. "You see those red dots on your chest? My snipers have you in their sights. The moment that knife breaks her skin, you're dead. But if you're smart, you'll step away now." The man looked down and saw 3 laser dots dancing across his torso. His hand shook. "Your choice," Jaewon continued. "Die quickly or die slowly. But you're dying today either way." The scarred man made his choice. He moved the knife away from Betty's throat and lunged at Jaewon instead. He didn't make it 3 steps. Jaewon's bullet caught him between the eyes. The man dropped like a puppet with cut strings. Then Jaewon was running to Betty, cutting the ropes with shaking hands. The moment she was free, he pulled her into his arms, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. "I've got you," he whispered over and over, his voice breaking. "I've got you. You're safe. You're safe." Betty clung to him, finally letting herself cry. "You came! Of course I came!" He pulled back just enough to cup her face, his thumbs wiping away her tears. His own eyes were wet. "Did you think I wouldn't? Did you think anything in this world could stop me from getting to you?" "You're crying," she said softly, touching his cheek. "Because I thought I lost you." His voice cracked completely. 3 days of not knowing if you were alive. 3 days of going insane. "I love you, Betty. I'm completely, hopelessly in love with you, and I can't do this anymore, can't pretend, can't push you away. I need you like I need air." Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. "You love me? So much it terrifies me, so much I'd burn the whole world down to keep you safe." He pressed his forehead to hers. "I'm sorry I was such a coward. Sorry I wasted so much time fighting this. But I'm done fighting. If you'll have me, broken and dangerous as I am, I'm yours. Completely yours. I love you too," she whispered. "I've loved you for weeks, even when you were cruel. Even when you pushed me away. I saw the real you beneath all that ice, and I fell in love with him." Jaewon kissed her then, soft and desperate and full of every emotion he'd been holding back. When he pulled away, he carefully lifted her into his arms. "Let's go home," he said. The ride back to the mansion was quiet. Jaewon held Betty in the back seat, refusing to let her go even for a second. He kept touching her face, her hair, reassuring himself she was real and safe. "Your hands are shaking," she noticed. "I know. They haven't stopped since you were taken." He looked at her, vulnerable in a way she'd never seen. "You have no idea what these 3 days did to me. I became a monster. I killed so many people, Betty. Didn't even hesitate. All to find you. I'm not afraid of your darkness. You should be. But I'm not." She took his shaking hands in hers. "I see all of you, Jaewon, the killer and the man, the cold boss and the one who whispers sweet things at night. I love all of you." Something in his chest, something that had been frozen for years, finally thawed completely. At home, Jaewon carried her straight to his bedroom, not hers, his. He cleaned her wounds with gentle hands, his jaw clenching every time she winced. "I should have protected you better," he said quietly. "Should have seen this coming. You saved me. That's what matters." After her wounds were cleaned and bandaged, he just held her on his bed. No passion, no urgency, just the two of them, breathing together, hearts beating in sync. "I don't want separate rooms anymore," he said into her hair. "I want you here, in my bed, in my life, properly. No more pushing me away. Never again. I promise you, Betty. No more coldness, no more pretending you don't mean everything to me." He tilted her chin up to look at him. "I'm going to love you openly, proudly. Let the whole world know you're mine and I'm yours." She smiled despite her split lip. "I'd like that." They stayed in his room for 3 days, barely leaving the bed. Jaewon cancelled all his meetings, told his men he was not to be disturbed unless the world was ending. He spent those days worshipping Betty with his hands and mouth and words. He told her he loved her approximately 100 times a day before she woke up, after she fell asleep, in between kisses, while making love to her slowly, thoroughly, showing her with his body what his words couldn't fully express. "You're mine," he would whisper against her skin. "My wife, my woman, my heart. I'll never let anyone hurt you again." And Betty would hold him close, feeling the truth of his words in every touch. This wasn't the cold man who had married her out of obligation. This was Jaewon, completely open, vulnerable, desperately in love. On the 4th day, they finally emerged from the bedroom. Jaewon's men did double takes at their boss, who walked around with his arm constantly around Betty's waist, who smiled when she spoke, who looked at her like she hung the moon. "You're different." His head of security noted carefully. "I'm in love," Jaewon replied simply. "And I'm done hiding it." That evening, Jaewon took Betty to the garden. The sun was setting, painting the sky in oranges and pinks. He pulled her down to sit between his legs, her back against his chest, his arms wrapped around her waist. "I need to tell you something," he said quietly. She tensed slightly. "What?" "I'm getting out. Not completely, but I'm making changes. No more violence unless absolutely necessary. No more unnecessary risks, because I have something to live for now." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "You asked me once what happens now. This is what happens. We build a life together, a real one. Maybe have kids someday if you want them." "Kids?" She turned to look at him, surprised. "Why not? Little girls with your beautiful skin and my stubbornness." He smiled, genuinely smiled, and it transformed his whole face. "Or boys with your courage and my complete inability to say no to you." Betty laughed, the sound light and free. "I never thought you'd want that. I never thought I'd want anything beyond power and revenge. But you changed me, Betty. You made me want ordinary things, happy things." His arms tightened around her. "You made me want to be a better man. You're already a good man. You just needed someone to see it. Then keep seeing it. Keep loving me. Keep being exactly who you are." He turned her in his arms so they were face to face. "Because I'm going to spend the rest of my life earning you, proving I deserve this, deserve you." "You already do." As the sun set completely, they sat together in the growing darkness, finally at peace. The fighting was over. The walls were down. All that remained was love, raw and real, and worth every moment of pain it took to get there. "I love you," Jaewon whispered. "I love you too," Betty replied. And for the first time in both their lives, Those words felt like a promise that would never be broken. 6 months had transformed everything. Betty stood in the sunroom of their mansion, her hands cradling a cup of tea as she watched the morning light paint gold across the garden. The house that once felt like a tomb now felt like home. Fresh flowers appeared in every room, music played through the halls, laughter echoed where silence used to reign. Behind her, strong arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her back against a solid chest, lips pressed against her neck, soft and reverent. "Good morning, my love," Jaewon murmured against her skin. She smiled, leaning into his embrace. "Good morning. You're up early. Couldn't sleep without you next to me." His hands splayed. Across her stomach, possessively. "You left the bed an hour ago." I was restless, thinking. About? He turned her in his arms, his dark eyes searching her face with the concern that had become constant since her kidnapping. He still woke up sometimes in the night, reaching for her, making sure she was real and safe beside him. "About how different everything is now," she said, touching his face. The hardness that used to live in his features had softened. He smiled more, laughed more, lived more. "About how happy I am." Something fierce and tender flashed in his eyes. "Not as happy as I'm going to make you today." "Why? What's happening today?" "You'll see." He kissed her forehead, then her nose, then her lips, with the gentleness he reserved only for her. "Get dressed. Something elegant. We have somewhere to be." 3 hours later, Betty found herself in a private conference room, filled with Jaewon's entire organisation, every lieutenant, every captain, every man who worked under him. She recognised many of them from various meetings over the past months. They had learned to respect her, to see her as more than just their boss's wife, but today felt different. The air hummed with anticipation. Jaewon stood at the head of the table, commanding and powerful in his black suit, but his hand held hers, fingers intertwined, a public display he would have died before showing 6 months ago. "I've called you all here to make an announcement," he began, his voice carrying authority that made grown men straighten in their chairs. "For years, I've built this organisation on fear, blood, and ruthlessness. We've profited from ventures that existed in moral grey areas and beyond. That ends today." Murmurs rippled through the room. Betty squeezed his hand, proud and nervous. "I'm restructuring everything. Our drug operations are done. Our illegal gambling rings are being shut down. Our weapons trafficking stops immediately." He paused, letting the shock settle. "We're going legitimate. Real estate development, import-export businesses, security consulting, all legal, all clean." "Boss." One of the older lieutenants spoke up carefully. "That will cost us millions. Our rivals will see it as weakness." "Let them." Jaewon's eyes were hard as steel. "Anyone who has a problem with this new direction can leave now with a generous severance and my guarantee of safe passage. But if you stay, you follow my rules. We build an empire that won't crumble because of federal investigations or gang wars. We build something that lasts." He looked around the room, daring anyone to challenge him. No one did. "There's one more thing you all need to understand." He pulled Betty closer, his arm wrapping around her waist. "This woman is not just my wife. She's my partner, my equal. Any decision I make with her counsel. Any respect you show me, you show her. Any enemy who targets me, I'll destroy. But any enemy who touches her, I'll make their death last days." The room was utterly silent. "From this moment forward, she has my authority in all business matters. Her word is my word. Her safety is your primary concern after mine." His voice dropped dangerously low. "Is that understood?" "Yes, boss," came the unified response. Betty's heart swelled. This wasn't just about business restructuring. This was Jae-won publicly declaring to his entire world that she mattered, that she had value beyond being his possession, that she was his equal in every way that counted. After the meeting, as they walked to the car, she stopped him. That was a huge risk. You're completely changing everything you built. No. He cupped her face in both hands. I'm building something better, something worthy of you. Our children won't inherit a criminal empire. They'll inherit a legitimate business and a father who chose love over power. Tears pricked her eyes. Children? His smile was soft, hopeful. If you want them, if you want a future with me that looks nothing like our past, I want everything with you, she whispered. He kissed her there on the street, not caring who saw. The cold, untouchable Mafia boss, kissing his wife like she was oxygen and he was drowning. 2 weeks later, Betty stood in a small chapel filled with flowers and soft candlelight, but unlike the first time, her heart was full instead of breaking. This ceremony was their choice, their decision, their truth. She wore a dress she actually picked, a flowing cream gown that made her dark skin glow. Fresh flowers were woven into her natural hair. She carried a bouquet of wildflowers instead of perfect roses, and at the end of the aisle, Jae-won waited. He looked breathtaking in a tailored grey suit, his eyes locked on her with such love and reverence that her steps faltered. When she reached him, he took both her hands, and she saw they were shaking slightly. Nervous, she whispered. Terrified, he admitted with a small smile. Afraid I'll wake up and this will all be a dream. The officiant, a kind older woman instead of the stern man from their first wedding, smiled at them both. We are gathered here today to witness these two souls renew their commitment to each other, not from obligation, but from love. Not from debt, but from choice. Jae-won squeezed her hands. Jae-won, you may speak your vows. He took a deep breath, his eyes never leaving Betty's face. The first time we stood together like this, I made promises I didn't mean. I looked at you and saw a burden, a complication, something forced on me that I resented. His voice grew rough with emotion. I was so wrong. You weren't a complication. You were salvation. You saw through my walls, refused to be invisible, and loved me when I gave you every reason not to. Tears already streamed down Betty's face. Today, I make different promises. I promise to love you openly, proudly, without reservation. I promise to be worthy of the gift you've given me by staying. I promise to build a life with you where our children know safety, love, and parents who chose each other every single day. He lifted her hands to his lips, kissing each one. You are my wife by choice now, my partner, my heart, and I will spend every day of my life proving I deserve you. Betty had to take a moment to compose herself before she could speak her own vows. When we first met, you were the most terrifying man I'd ever seen. So cold, so dangerous. I thought marrying you was a death sentence. She smiled through her tears. But you weren't what you seemed. Beneath that ice was a man capable of devastating love, a man who protected fiercely, felt deeply, and just needed someone to see him. Jae-won's jaw clenched with emotion. I promise to always see you, the real you. I promise to stand beside you as you build something better. I promise to love you in your darkness and your light, because both make you who you are. Her voice strengthened. You are my husband by choice now, my partner, my home, and I choose you every single day for the rest of our lives. The rings, the officiant said softly. They exchanged new rings, not the cold platinum bands from their forced wedding, but warm gold engraved with words in both Korean and English, forever, bound by choice. I now pronounce you husband and wife. Again. The officiant smiled. You may kiss your bride. Jaewon pulled Betty into his arms and kissed her with everything he felt. Love, devotion, gratitude, promise. The small gathering of trusted friends and a few of his most loyal men applauded, but they were lost in each other. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Jaewon whispered against her lips, Mine, forever mine. Forever yours, she agreed. The reception was held in the mansion's garden, transformed into an elegant outdoor celebration. String lights hung from the trees. Tables were draped in soft fabrics. Music played, romantic and sweet. But before the dancing started, before the celebration truly began, Betty pulled Jaewon aside to a quiet corner of the garden. I have something to tell you, she said, her heart racing. His expression immediately shifted to concern. What's wrong? Are you feeling okay? You've been tired lately. Should we leave? I can call the doctor. Jaewon. She put her hand over his mouth, laughing softly. I'm fine. Better than fine, actually. She took his hand and placed it on her stomach. We're going to have a baby. He froze completely. His eyes went wide, dropping to where his hand rested against her flat stomach, then back to her face. You're pregnant? His voice was barely a whisper. 3 months. I found out last week, but wanted to wait until today to tell you. Our new beginning deserved this news. Jaewon's eyes filled with tears. She'd seen him cry only once before, when he found her after the kidnapping, but now tears spilled down his cheeks unchecked as his hand pressed gently against her stomach. We made a baby, he said, wonder in his voice. We're going to be parents. Are you happy? She asked, suddenly nervous. Happy? He laughed, the sound breaking with emotion. Betty, I'm terrified and thrilled and so grateful I can barely breathe. You've given me everything. A reason to change, a reason to be better. And now, a child, our child. He dropped to his knees, right there in the garden, pressing his forehead against her stomach. His hands cradled her hips gently, reverently. I promise you. He spoke to her stomach, his voice thick with tears. I promise I'll be a good father. I'll protect you always, love you unconditionally, give you a better life than I had. You'll never know fear or loneliness or pain if I can prevent it. Betty's hands threaded through his hair as her own tears fell. You're going to be an amazing father. He looked up at her, his face wet but smiling. I love you so much. Thank you. Thank you for this, for everything. They stayed like that for long minutes, wrapped in each other and the promise of their growing family, before returning to their celebration. The night deepened, and finally, the moment came for their first dance as husband and wife by choice. Jaewon led Betty onto the dance floor as a slow song began, his arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her close. Her hands rested on his shoulders as they swayed together. Do you remember what I said at our first wedding? He murmured, his lips brushing her ear. You said many cruel things. I said you were mine. His arms tightened. I meant it as a threat, as ownership, but tonight I say it differently. He pulled back to look into her eyes. You're mine, Betty, and I'm yours, completely. Irrevocably, forever. She smiled, standing on her toes to kiss him softly. I remember something else you once said, that you'd ruin me for other men. I did ruin you, he agreed, his voice dropping low, intimate. But you ruined me right back. Ruined me for anyone else. Ruined me for the cold life I used to live. You ruined me in the best possible way. Good. She whispered against his lips. Because you're stuck with me forever now. Me and our baby and whatever life we build together. Forever sounds perfect. They danced until the stars came out, surrounded by the few people they trusted, the music soft and romantic. And when Jaewon whispered promises against her skin, when Betty laughed and kissed him without fear or reservation, it was clear that their story had transformed completely. What began in darkness had found its light. What began in force had become choice. What began as a transaction had become the truest love either had ever known. Later, as they stood together watching their guests enjoy the celebration, Jaewon's hand rested protectively on Betty's stomach, where their child grew. His other hand held hers, their new rings catching the light. "I told you once that loving you was weakness," he said quietly. "And now I know that loving you is the strongest thing I've ever done. It made me better, braver, more human." He kissed her temple. "You saved me, Betty, from myself, from a life that would have destroyed me eventually." "We saved each other," she corrected. "You gave me strength when I thought I had none. You showed me that even the coldest hearts can thaw, that love can grow in the darkest places." They stayed there as the celebration continued around them, two souls who found each other in the worst circumstances and built something beautiful anyway. Their journey hadn't been easy. It had been painful, complicated, messy, and real, but it was theirs, and it was forever. In the months and years that followed, they would face challenges. Building a legitimate empire wasn't simple. Old enemies wouldn't disappear overnight. Parenthood would test them in ways they couldn't imagine. But they would face it all together, as partners, as equals, as two people who chose each other every single day. The forced wedding had become a real marriage. The prisoner had become a partner. The cold Mafia boss had become a man capable of devastating love. And the woman who was sold to pay a debt had become the queen of an empire built on loyalty, respect, and a love that would last forever. Their story was proof that even the darkest beginnings could lead to the brightest futures. That choice was more powerful than force. That love, real love, could transform everything, forever bound, not by obligation, but by choice, not by debt, but by devotion. And that made all the difference. If you enjoyed Betty and Jaewon's passionate journey from forced marriage to forever love, please subscribe to stay updated on more captivating romance stories. We would love to hear from you in the comments below. Tell us where you are watching from and share your thoughts about this emotional roller coaster of a love story. Did you feel the chemistry? Were you rooting for them from the start? Or did Jaewon have to win you over? What was your favourite moment between these two? Drop your comments, hit that subscribe button, and share this story with anyone who loves intense, transformative romance. Your support means everything, and we cannot wait to bring you more stories that will make your heart race.